Hello. All right, we will be getting started shortly, so if you'll take your seats, we'll begin the next session. I think some people are still downstairs, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. Are we ready? Are you ready? All right. So I'll hand it over to George and Taras to lead us through our next session. George, are you ready?
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much. We had to have a session on usage of psychedelic drugs to treat PTSD, but both US and Ukraine don't have how to check it, so we'll change the course. So we'll ask our colleague from USA, Dr. Brian, to represent his thoughts. Thank you.
So I would say I think one of the comments that I found very valuable was actually related to the need to identify what works for whom, because there are actually a variety of different approaches that have been shown to be very effective for trauma and PTSD. And so some of the work that we have been doing really relates to kind of those lower intensity types of treatments that can be scaled up and disseminated very broadly, and that have very good response rates. Something on the order of 2/3 or 3/4 of people who receive one of these trauma therapies will recover from PTSD or experience significant reductions in their symptoms and big improvements in their well-being. And so we can start thinking more along the lines of different stages or different steps in the services that we provide. But I agree as well that a good first step would be to really understand the scope of the problem. And so perhaps one of the takeaways here, something that we might want to look at is, how do we start to work within Ukraine to assess what are the needs, what are the problems, how widespread are they? So that could help focus our efforts on where we should be perhaps targeting different interventions, different treatments, prevention strategies, and then thinking of it from this perspective of what is most cost effective, as well as what will have the biggest impact at scale. Some of what we've learned in other nations, not just the US, but around the world, is that some of these lower level psychotherapies, counseling techniques really carry a lot of impact for low cost. One of the considerations, though, is making sure that you have professionals or other people who can deliver those treatments effectively. And so the educational training pipeline is, really a very important part of the first step. The good news is those educational and training programs exist. And so it might be more of a matter of just translating them into Ukrainian, making sure that cultural and national considerations are taken into account. But that might be an easy first step to start looking at some of the possible solutions. Related to that, I think another good news about some of what we know globally about how to help with PTSD is that the treatments and interventions that are most effective are actually quite flexible in how they can be delivered. And so they can be administered face-to-face, one-on-one. Some of them can be administered in group settings. We now know that we can meet with people every single day for 1 or 2 weeks, and it works. We can do it remotely, virtually, and so we can now reach people on the other side of the country or the other side of the world who otherwise might not be able to come meet with us directly. And so I think all that being said is I think that's perhaps kind of two areas that it sounds like might be useful to kind of think about starting of, first off, really assessing what is happening and what's going on so that we do a better job of targeting our solutions, and then secondly, looking at some of these lower intensity, highly flexible delivery systems and trying to set up the training and educational structures to bring that to Ukraine and put that in the hands of your local professionals as well as others within the community.
Thank you very much. I
will add up just some of my observations, saying that there are different approaches, and sometimes we have a theoretical request that this approach has to be 100% efficient in all groups of population, which is not relevant. So you will have to have personnel tailored approaches and approaches that work for a certain individual, and we don't need to throw out other approaches that if they don't work for the group. In US we say practice makes perfect, and having a good thing is a ward to the perfect. So we need to keep to that principle during the war time in Ukraine. So these are some observations that can be applied. Personally, I can add that there are veterans that are refusing from screens like offline therapy, and they're expecting personal therapy. Many still accept that, and that gives us an opportunity to multiply our efficiency of therapy for a bigger number of people. So let's not throw away all the approaches, because people are different and the approaches should be different also. So we also have a colleague who was working in Syria and has an experience there on adapting his methods. So let me call him to the stage and he'll share the experience.
I am Ahmed Albes. I'm from Union of Medical Care and Relief Organization. Our organization works in northwest Syria, in Turkey, in Yemen, in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and in Ukraine. We started our working here in Ukraine in partnership with David Mott Foundation in capacity building program for surgeons and practitioners in Ukraine. Here, very important to take this opportunity to explain our experience in northwest Syria. As you know, northwest Syria, as a conflict zone and with limited sources and non-state area, there are no government, no health system from 13 years in northwest Syria. So the organizations with medical bodies on the ground, they establish kind of response to the affected population in northwest Syria for the host community and IDPs in northwest Syria, especially with a little bit lack of human resources, psychiatrics and practitioners working in protection and in mental health. I have small presentation and introduction about our program in northwest Syria. Our program in mental health and psychosocial support, MHPSS program, our overall awesome MHPSS program launched in 2014. As you know, the conflict-related risk, attacks on health facilities, detention for health workers, bombardment and using chemical weapons in northwest Syria, and forced displacement for more than 6 million of people to northwest Syria, more than 6 million to Europe and Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon. It create kind of idea how we can cover this gap of mental health, how we can support women, children, adults, people with disabilities in Northwest Syria. So we, with other organizations and based on WHO health cluster and other UN agencies, we established kind of program to respond to affected population. This program aims to protect, promote psychosocial well-being, prevent and treat mental health disorders for beneficiaries and IDPs, for host community and IDPs. We're working on two main components. First of all, services delivery through the following response models. First of all, stand-alone mental health centers, including inpatient psychiatric care. The second one, integrated MHPSS services within primary health centers, PHC, and secondary and tertiary health care, STHS settings. The third one, mental health mobile clinics. As you know, the people don't have access to health centers, especially with the level of poverty and economic status on Northwest Syria. It's very important to have mobile clinics so we can reach the people where they are live in camps, maybe in some very difficult access area. Maybe the context in Syria not different at the context in Ukraine, especially within the same kind of attacks on civilians and on health facilities and infrastructure. And the first one, remotely provide MHPSS and helpline services. Hotline, people can reach our services also online. So the second one, support sustained mental health, education, and early recovery. Also, as you know, in this siege area, without any kind of systematic learning, education, university, it was very important to keep the education in the field of mental health and protection services. So we established the program Amal and Takamul. What mean of Amal and Takamul? Amal is advancing mental health through adult learning, and Takamul, complementary technical assistance and capacity for mental health upgrade and learning initiatives, supporting local centers, central bodies, and the board of medical specialties in Northwest Syria, and in partnership with Aleppo University, Free Aleppo University, by supporting a 4-year psychiatry residency program in partnership with European Union for 4 years, including supporting medical schools, undergraduates on psychiatry and psychiatry subjects. And the second program, 2 years, cognitive behavior therapy diploma. It accredited diploma for psychiatric workers and BSWs in Northwest Syria for specialized non-psychiatric intervention of CBT. Maybe I give also brief about our services in Northwest Syria. Also cover about 25% of the needs in mental health field in Northwest Syria, and 75% of inpatient services. So we have 2 big hospitals. They provide the inpatient mental health services in Northwest Syria. Here, maybe we can put our hand on the very big gap in conflict area, especially in mental health and protection services. Maybe our experience in Syria after 3 years of the conflict, this idea started to thinking about because of extreme attacks on civilians, because of displacement. It was not very important, but it reflects very bad on the population. Many of disabilities, many of cases with this kind of mental health cases need this kind of care. Here in Ukraine, it's very important to maybe exchange the experience. So what it conducted in Ukraine, what we conducted in Syria, and how we can develop a program to cover this need. If you have any questions in this regard regarding the conflict in Syria and the health system, I'm ready for. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It sounds like the experience you had would be very applicable to the people who've been displaced from the bombed out cities of the East, certainly. Так що досвід, що наш
So the experience that our colleague had in Syria for IDPs who were removed from the east of Ukraine. Do you have any questions?
How do you track a patient's progress? I know it's a general question, but you know, from the initial diagnosis to recovery.
You know, this program, it's collective work, not awesome working on, but we are part of health cluster and UN agencies cluster. So in this coordination system, we have 4Ws, HERAMS system. So we have our reporting system for all services in Northwest Syria. And the tracking system, it within the health bodies on the ground. So the health facility linked with health bodies, health directorate established on Northwest Syria. So we gain on case management. So some health facilities, they didn't have this kind of integrated services. So they should have case management for mental health cases. So this kind of comprehensivity and collective work within the health facility give you this kind of tracking, and there are also they developed kind of system to record all mental health cases and it report to the mental health and protection cluster. So all information regarding the development of mental health services and health services in Northwest Syria collected on the health cluster, and they track this. Yes, WHO and with the other national and international organizations.
Thank you so much. I know in any emergency, any conflict setting, money is always so hard and becomes a discussion. How in Northwest Syria did your organization and others advocate for more funding for mental health services, both to the local authorities in your area as well as to the international community? What worked?
Thank you for your question. Very important question, especially, you know, in the first years of conflict, nobody focused on mental health. Nobody focused on protection. And so it was very important to focus on this field, especially when we recorded many of cases with a kind of mental health effect of the conflict-related risks. Here we started with the other organization to put in our reports, in our meetings on health cluster, how the increasing the number of disabilities and mental health cases in Northwest Syria. This increasing in number within 2 or 3 years, you know, if you compare with the cases before the conflict and after the conflict, you can observe the huge increasing, a very extreme increasing in these cases. So it was very important to establish kind of integrated mental health services in primary health centers, in hospitals, emergency hospital, trauma hospital, and it was for donors, it wasn't accepted because they working in emergencies. So all their support for emergency, for trauma, and for emergency cases. The mental health, it wasn't considered as emergency cases, and the collective decision from local organization, because they are on the ground and they can observe the cases and the reflection of these cases on maybe the condition of community. Sometimes the level of crime live because of this kind of mental health disease. And sometimes, you can observe the community kind of community refusing these cases, stigma, and how you can deal with the stigma in this area. So our advocacy, putting reports, putting the cases on the table in front of donors, UN agencies help with this because also they developed the program for mental health protection and other related programs. Yes, thank you. Any question? Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Тепер трошки маємо.
Well, we have a small piece of time. I wanted to raise another topic which was not on the agenda. I mean the topic of stigmatization of mental disorders and acceptance of victims of such traumas back to community. As you know, Vietnamese war was very controversial in USA, and there were people who supported to continue war, and there were people who were against the war. So when the veterans came back, they had different attitudes. Some would be treated as heroes, and some were spitted on. And we know if a person comes back from the front line and he has a mental disorder and the society does not accept him or her adequately, that actually worsens the person's disorder and enables him to integrate into the society. So that's an opening question. How is it in Ukraine? Do you feel the acceptance of veterans by the communities? Even if a soldier is coming back to his family for a number of days, I understand there was a colleague who mentioned that, so when he came back to civil life and the official didn't want to service him straight away, that person felt the stress and anxiety, and he was ready to react like being aggressive. And this is a professional psychologist, but still he underwent such situation. So what is the attitude of our soldiers? Thank you. This is a big issue, and the veterans who are we working with, they are constantly talking about a bad attitude to them. And the aggression they collected on the front lines, and they bring them home, and quite often they express their anger in such situations. And one of the veterans, for example, who came to our facility for treatment, he said, I was so tensed and so aggressive that during the night I used to go out and find someone to fight with, because he could not stand the pressure inside. And there were lots of claims against the officials, the paper army so-called, which issues all the necessary documents. And almost all the veterans share how they managed to hardly hold on not to harm those people. So I think we need to pay a great attention and arrange a psychoeducation for veterans and the representatives of society. Maybe this is the first approach in providing mental health services to help adapt, and then step 2, start a fundamental therapy. Thank you. Я запитаю своїх колег, які служили в Збройних силах України, коли проводили дослідження IHS, 70% учасників сказали так, мої колеги потребують психологічної підтримки. Тобто вони 70% знали тих, кому потрібна така допомога, і 20% лише сказали, що їм самим потрібна така допомога. Тому яким чином краще зрозуміти і підтримати воїнів ЗСУ, якщо ми говоримо про стигматизацію їх? Well, that's another good question. Because from my parents' experience who moved from Galicia in Ukraine, they said we didn't have such orders. We were perfect people. We didn't have depression or suicide or any disorders. But now I will ask you, what is the attitude from the society to acceptance that there are such orders and they need to be treated? Is the society ready to accept that they need psychological support? Please.
Працюю в психіатричній.
I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm working in a psychiatric hospital, and I face the situation when the media and the leaders of opinions in social networks, they create the social opinion in most cases, and in many cases they create a problem without overcoming the stigma. Sometimes they make their materials more emotional, more readable, more clickable. They provide a lot of stories which are read by the soldiers, and for example, the leaders would think like, nobody cares, and the soldier thinks like they don't care. So the next idea that PTSD will be widespread and almost everybody will have it. Like a soldier can say, I think that my PTSD is not a diagnosis. But so the stigma here is that the person believes that PTSD is a diagnosis, a stigma, and overcoming stigma needs to include a resolution of a lot of problems and a correct work of media and the leaders of the public opinion who are posting to their Telegram channels or Instagram, all different kinds of social media. Yes, I do agree with the speaker that social media says that PTSD are reflected as a typical stigmatized set of parameters, saying a soldier will hit you when he comes because you didn't look correctly or you went to drink coffee. But this is not true. And when seeing the soldier, of course there are some soldiers traumatized by different factors, and they have some issues, but most of the soldiers, especially if you talk to them in a normal way, just like another person, not as a soldier who was traumatized due to different events. So if you treat them okay, they accept it okay, and they never become rude or they don't start shouting. But as for the bureaucracy treats the soldier as something minor. But if we're talking about a medical personnel or individuals, the soldiers are quite kind if you treat them the same way. So it doesn't matter. It does not relate to the image of the soldier created by social media, like a bad guy. So thank you. Попросимо нашого колегу, який служив в Афганістані.
Previous life, many moons ago, I was an infantry platoon commander in Afghanistan. 10 years ago, actually. I think my reflections on how the British Army have dealt with mental health within the military With the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, what the military learnt very quickly is that to maintain your operational effectiveness, you need to look after your soldiers' mental health. And so the change came from within the military. And tracking, and that came from the professional support, as well as in my role as a platoon commander, I was a TRIM. Does everybody know what I mean by TRIM? So I had to write it down. Trauma risk management. It's training that people like me as an officer did to recognize certain signs and symptoms in soldiers. And it wasn't just me, so I was a commander of 30 soldiers, but the section commanders, so commanders of 10 soldiers below me, all three of them were also, so they were TRIM practitioners, so they had this training to recognize that, and I was a TRIM manager. And so with that model, you can start looking after the people around you. And it's a referral system, so the section commander refers, if it's identified after a patrol, which has been pretty serious, people get trimmed. And if they recognize that it's serious, the soldier gets referred to me, I kind of make my own assessment, and then I can refer on to professionals. The reason why I tell you this is because I think if the military, and I don't know how the Ukrainian military is approaching this problem, but if the military understands the value and has its own processes in place, the rest of the country will follow. That's the critical. Let's not try and change the civilian population's mind, or let's not try and make videos to say that it's okay to not be okay. If the military get it right, then the rest of the country will get it right.
Thank you. Питання для вас.
A question for you. In psychiatry, we are well trained and experienced for veterans' needs, but we have colleagues in different medical spheres like endocrinology or neurology, which are less experienced in this. And if we refer a person to another facility and they don't receive the necessary care, they explode because it's a different doctor who is not patient enough or does not have enough skill to understand what was the mental issue. So the question is, are the other medical specialists ready to accept the people with psychological trauma? Maybe you have everything in place. Okay, the other question then. Do you think that the society, they feel that there is war and how they treat the veterans who come back or who still serve in the army? I can hear veterans who are treated binary, like both as heroes, and they are trying to keep that spring down, and then it springs up and he gets into a problem. Apparently these people don't like that kind of binary attitude. They know that they have different attitudes, but they need to be accepted as normal people by others. But the question is to you, if you see a person in the uniform or on the crutches, what is the general attitude in society to such situations?
Психолог і не психіатр, але тут я буду говорити просто як громадянин України. І те, що я спостерігаю, живучи у Києві, і те, що я чую, так, у своєму оточенні, або коли я там
So when I'm contacting person from a different sphere, in my surrounding, all the people are treating well, all the veterans and the soldiers in uniform, all my people are looking straight into the eyes of the soldier and thank him. But I hear stories saying, I'm a wife of a soldier, I was there for my business, and people turned away from me. They turn away when my man is in uniform. He feels ashamed, and I say, I don't understand why, because there was a situation when I was traveling in a taxi, and he says, not people are accepting soldiers with the same respect. Not everybody has this thankfulness. Some perceive us as criminals or inadequate persons, and so on. So I've been reading a book of John Vellen, a psychiatrist who will supervise us. So my opinion was that the people who are tensed with a lot of negative feelings inside, they seem to transfer these perceiving from the society. Maybe the person was thinking about something else and then lowered their eyesight, and the veteran may explain the reaction according to their internal feeling. And maybe due to this, there is this in accordance, and it would be good if the media, just like in US, to say that veteran is an honorable person and soldier is the guardian angel. This is respect to the, and maybe it will make us as society to show this every time when they see the soldier, and this will give them trust to themselves, that they are not alone, that the society accepts them, and there will be a lot of social initiatives. For example, my brother, that just naturally happened. Then there were meetings of writers, philosophers, a kind of a music therapy or just a jam session, and lots of veterans come in for these sessions. And I can see that if you give this person an instrument, the person starts to opens up, or someone starts crying. But I would like to have more initiatives to include the veterans into their circles, which accepts them, where they feel the trust and respect to themselves, so they could open up and we could hug them as society. So when the soldier comes for a vacation or after they are getting away from the army, we need to work with the society, I think, for us to be ready to accept all of them in an adequate way. I think we can react adequately, but maybe you can share. I understand that in cities and villages we can see a lot of people who have prostheses or wheelchairs. So as a psychologist, I observed people looking at these guys. Some really lower their eyes, and sometimes people just don't know how to behave. Do they provide some help or just pass by, as my colleague says, or should they say thank you? Well, saying thank you is the best way. And I want to raise another topic. When I am on the ground, let's say, in the trenches, I can see a soldier coming in. He has a bottle, he gets into the metro and keeps drinking, and he behaves aggressively. Of course, when I'm sitting in front in my uniform at times, because I'm traveling back from front and I need to react to this, because the other passengers understand that if they address this soldier, they will feel the aggressive reaction and they are afraid. Of course, I'm talking about single case. So then I have enough courage to talk to the passengers and say, dear passengers, I am a military, this is my brother, and I can cope with the situation. because currently I can do that. So I approach that soldier, and it's enough for me to say just a couple of words, and he understands that he has a co-fellow, and I drag him out of that situation, and I'm trying to find out what is his problem. I'm providing my contact information, and I understand that this is a person who needs help. We can't say that this is a bad guy. It's a single case, but it can influence the overall behavior and our estimation, saying all the soldiers are like that. What is my work with a team? When I come to the front lines, I can see a different picture in comparison that on a telemarathon with official news where our good guys wear clear uniform and say good words. I see a different picture, like it's a trench filled up with water, so there's dirt everywhere. I'm not telling you the whole situation, but I may say that these are real warriors and these are real heroes. And I always say these are the elite soldiers. They say, I'm not elite, I'm dirty. And when I look at that, I still believe that they are one of the best. So when these elite soldiers traveling in a train and the passengers are closing their nose because he smells, he says, like, I don't want this passenger to travel with me, but the civil passengers have to accept that. Of course, I understand the smell is bad, but this warrior will wash himself, he will clean himself when he comes home, and he'll be a beautiful person. So we need to treat it with respect and understanding. This is important for us to understand.
So the state uses the mass media to represent militaries the right way and to prepare the community, the population, to accept them, like trainings, advertisement, using newspapers, the programs for the state that uses. I would tell about the programs, what we do, because I work with veterans as well. We are working with veterans and conducting huge work with them, that they would be recreating our country. Everyone tells that military would come back and make everything good here. We need to understand and show the guys that they need to restore the country. First, they need to be enough education, enough skills, how they can cooperate and coordinate work in Ukraine. Because here, as a volunteers, we are working and we're telling them about the self-coordinating of the communities, of the local level, that they would need new skills they got on the front line. They need these skills for the civilian society to create an effective local community, because they have resources and it's their goal to organize the local community. So now we are creating the new programs what we would teach the controlling of the communities. And of course communities know I work with business as well. There are great programs to help veteran on the workplace. There is a legislation, acts and appropriate instructions for that. There are great social looking businesses with good reputation. They create jobs for veterans, provide medical support for veterans at the cost of the company. And these veterans they have a great honor to work for them, because they're socially responsible companies. And this experience we can share on conference like this, in mass media, how veterans were employed through businesses. And to finalize it, I'm speaking too much, but I have lots of other activities I would like to share. If you will give me the chance, I will talk. So we created the veterans movement. The veterans movement that doesn't allow of the acting policymaker to touch it. You understand. Ukrainians understand what I'm talking. We don't want the veteran to create a joker for for any politician. We are creating our own veterans movement, and it's named veterans community and business community, because veterans are businessmen. So we are creating the strategy for the development of Ukraine 2030. So we are involving veterans for civilian life, peaceful life, and for them to see themselves and to blend into Ukrainian development, so that we do not give the ability for the acting politician that they are doing things. No, it's enough of the US and Canada and of course American colleagues here. They understood that when they took the responsibility on their own for the veterans communities and their families, they were creating centers, they were offering the best one to the Parliament, to the Senate, and to work on the bills. And to finalize, the soldiers like so much when I invite them for the victory ball. But please ask me when it will happen. So if the businessman asked, he asked when would be the victory ball. So I would tell only when there is a fight on the front line will end. It's on the San Sofia's square. It would be 3 months after we have real victory, and on this victory ball we would declare who is the best and the most important leader for the world. It would be our boys, our soldiers. Thank you very much. So I'm asking one more time, does the government in the mass media and uses mass media to prepare, do you see advertisement in internet that people are prepared, that who are veterans, who are militaries, what they suffered? Do you have such an government program? Yes, please. In general, this policy of the government state informational policy, we can divide, to my mind, into two parts. First, to work for community and to work for military. Working for the society. The work of the government in this, it's advertisement work, agitation of the famous brigades of Ukraine, like 3rd Assault Brigade, 12th Brigade of the NGU Azov, Hartia. They have very good media work that not only tells about the process of the soldiers' work or military, but in general how it is like for the military to come back, how he feels like, what he's seen, and how to work with him. But if you see TikTok, there is Azov's NGO's patronage service. They are amazing programs. They have amazing videos, and I've seen one of them. They share it in the hospitals like a manual. How are you? Very simple, brief manual, but how to speak to military, what he can feel. It's described there, and a person, military but regular, any civilian parents can go and read it. And I wouldn't say it was like the redundant information, but it would be a good introductory information. And second, on the military. So the commanders of the medical forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, they are conducting constant trainings, educational products, materials to address the psychological trauma, trainings, how to conduct them. So they are conducting constant conferences between militaries and psychologists and civilians. And for militaries it's more in depth because it's under normative acts, but with civilians in this way that the government as of now is now touching base. But for me its most attention brings to the media brigades that are in the general public. I've seen this year the videos that coming from Ukraine, from different battalions, frontline battalions, all heroes. are coming back alive. But we know that not everyone comes from this trauma alive. Yes, maybe on the video he feels good, but in the evening at home he feels much worse. So the question is, is there any means that anyone who was a hero, that he needs help? I know that for us at home, our community takes information not only from newspapers, besides I am taking it from newspapers, but otherwise from the TV. So you have the information and the community to get understanding the psychology, and it's not so expensive that the government can start the program, that maybe he is a hero, he was a prisoner of war, but it's not on the service. But PTSD, it's also disability. You couldn't see it. It's deeply hidden. So you need to prepare people that he maybe goes well, and it seems that he's okay. But when he stays at home on himself, he doesn't feel so good and needs help. Also to add, there is a movie, I don't remember the name, this is from the anti-terroristic operations time movie about the Valera's Heights, where is the story of these soldiers that stopped the tank assault of the separatists on Ukrainian positions. I don't remember where this heights is, but the movie describes exactly how these military soldiers he has amputations, and journalists we spent some time with him to take interviews with what he felt, what were his emotions, feelings during, and how he adopted later, and what were the mechanisms of this adaptation. So it's an interesting movie, you can have a look. So it broadly describes such stories, local stories, tendencies that the soldiers feel after the relevant wounds. Yes, we have stereotypes, but people are complex, and we are all different. Not all of them are appealing at the same time, and not in the movie, not everyone is a Rambo. Okay. If I might, I want to support and thanks my colleague for what was taught, what they feel, whether the society understands what they feel. We are not quite ready as a society, not the relatives, to speak in the first minutes after the guy, soldier, military, came from the hell. My brother calls me. Right now, I'm from there. I was there 3 days. He's a man, but I hear that his voice trembles, and he called me because he needs to talk. For me, not to help, but to feel. And believe me, I left everything. I don't understand, but me as a doctor, I was trying to find the words, how to support him, what to tell him. Just to say, hold on, you're good. It doesn't work, absolutely doesn't work. So yes, I support you fully. There needs to be the practically you couldn't find this information. It should be not help support trainings, but it's like a thesis, what you need to tell in the first minutes for him to feel more easy. Are you safe? But I'm calling you, so remember, you have us. We are your family. We're praying for you. So it's not like support, but it's almost 3 years in war. But even if we ourselves having this in each family, So the question is whether the families who have militaries, whether there are some theses from the government or the right words for moms. Yeah, the right words. Yes, there is a need for that. So there is a need. It is still exists. Yes, it is still exists. Christian. Thank you. The answer to this question, whether there is a state program regarding, do they tell the people how to support a military, how to behave? From the very beginning, when the full-scale invasion started, there was a program from the First Lady of Ukraine. How are you? This is the program. This is a bot where you can find in the menu different questions. Each day it offers you some topics for your choice. There is a program that helps person how to communicate better with the military. It's not only for parents but just for general public, and how you can support yourself. Also, I've seen not once different manuals. It's even for on 70 pages. For whom it's important, they had an ability to work with that, understand. And the other question is how common it is, whether it goes to everyone and to the general masses. Because who needs, yes, he will find. But the question is whether people are sure that there is such an information and a source for them. It's a very good question. Yes, of course, like we have a training and we have a virtual reality training. When you have on a person on a screen, and you tell him, no, it's not right. And in different scenarios, only after that you can understand what the attitude is. It's an easy, not pricey thing to do. But like mom or a wife, it comes out of 5-6 scenarios, and they learn what not to say and not to do. So yeah, but it's a very important thing. So I think the importance here is to spread it among masses, and it doesn't depend whether you have parents, friends on the front line, but for our society to grow up and to understand the scale of the problem and to change its own vision of it, because we would see it not 1 month, year, it would be a long-term project. So there is a need which is not fulfilled. So let's shift to another topic, the psychedelics that we heard about our colleagues about using ketamine in depression therapy and PTSD. So I would ask, could you please tell exactly what you're doing and what are your analysis? I would speak here not only as a representative of the hospital, of my hospital, but also as a co-founder of the Ukrainian Psychedelics Research Association. Before war, we started the movement towards legalization of psychedelics in Ukraine, because we have enough information how these therapies can help with mental problems and PTSD. And today we're capable to bring this question to the level of the government. There was a commission held in the committee of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine on healthcare. Now this question is recommended to the Ministry of Healthcare of Ukraine. We had a couple of meetings with the apparatus of the healthcare. In example, 1 week ago, we were helping with the world leaders and scientists in this sector. There was an online meeting with the Minister Leshko, and now we have the understanding for the Ministry of Healthcare how it's important, how it can help, and that Ukraine now is moving towards this direction. Unfortunately, because of the stigma regarding the psychedelics, we had regulations, even harder regulations than in most countries of the world, because even researchers were prohibited in Ukraine on psychedelics. So now we are provided capabilities to conduct these studies in Ukraine. Because we have now already a lot of researchers that prove that psychedelics therapy helps. So now there is a special commission created in the Ministry of Healthcare that will deal with these questions, how it should be done. So we're optimistically dealing with this. 1 year ago, we held the first conference on psychedelic therapy on the basis of the Lisava Polana, and it was supported by the Ministry of Healthcare. It gave a move to this, and the world leaders were present online in the psychedelic therapy. 1 month ago, also based on the Lisava Polana, there was a first symposium held for ketamine-assisted therapy. This is the thing that's acceptable right now. So now the question is to move it further. We don't know how long it would take with other psychedelics, but as of now, today, we can work with this. Regarding PTSD, from the scientific point of view, the situation is the following. Researchers on ketamine started from the depression therapy in 2000. There were lots of researches conducted from there and using lots of foreign protocols. So that's why we have the capability to work with this officially, because in 2017, Minister of Healthcare gave green light to using the international protocols, and our clinic started dealing with this. And as of today, regarding depression, it's of course, we see how efficiently it works, how it reduces the term for treatment. And regarding PTSD, as of now, there's not so many researchers that could give the capability to form the clinical general protocols on its basis, but somewhere it is 20, 25 researchers worldwide that show from different validity that yes, it works. So there are researches on the basis of which we started working ourselves with PTSD, and we see that it works. There's no way it couldn't work, because on any mental health problem there is also mental trauma. So, and ketamine therapy, now it's very effective. But we need to come back to the topic that not only the bureaucratic moments are blocking of the usage of this therapy on the state level, but it is also stigma. Not only the regular Ukrainian doesn't understand what's the difference between psychedelics from drugs, but lots of doctors, psychologists, they don't understand it as well. So I remember the situation from the previous year where we prepared the first conference, and I sent the agenda of the conference to the group Facebook community of the National Psychedelics Association, Psychology Association. The question was, it's not proven medicine, we wouldn't even publish it. That was such a high stigma for that in this question. So that's why lots of psychological education needed here. Lots of information in mass media that it's not drugs, they're not addictive. This is one of the instruments for healing, and that's one of the ways that the international funds can help us fund this mass media to spread this information and to be more understandable for our people and for veterans. In parallel from the official line of the therapy, as of today, we have the psychologists that understand this and that are helping in the front line, our defenders in different types of therapies. Of course, not on the front line itself, but helping those who special pills do not help and the official ways that do not help. So they are forced nowadays to work in a shade way, but to help our guys, and it works. So we need to move it on a higher level of understanding for it to be given to the biggest amount of people. Back to practical part, how it works in our clinic. This is intensive course, 4 or 5 weeks, when we do 2 ketamine assisted therapy per week with an integrated psychology therapy. It's important to notice that ketamine assisted therapy gives the real result, but not infusion. Infusions also they work, but they work much less efficiently. It's only pharmaceutical attitude, but if we use potential of the ketamine as a psychedelic, we use the ability of the changing of the consciousness level. It provides access to that traumatic material that creates PTSD and trauma. And especially it works with military, because they are, of course, they are heroes, strong man that needs to keep all his feelings to himself, and all these psychology blocks they prevent of open contact with the psychologist and efficient psychology therapy. So changing the consciousness level by this method, they are lowering its levels, and we have the ability to do the deep psychology work with trauma. So it's efficient, and that's why we can get such results that in 4 or 5 weeks we can bring these soldiers back to life. And we have video reports on the basis of our clinic online, you can see. And we think that if it would be able to conduct our research and in Lisova Polana, which is planned on ketamine therapy, if we would get enough materials and give to our Ministry of Healthcare, together with these international resources, it will provide the ability to include these protocols into the national protocols of the depression and PTSD treatments. And it would be open for the state hospitals, military hospitals. Of course, there would be a big question there about the education of the specialists, but it's a technical question. And we are working on this with our association. I think that the perspectives are good, not bad, but we need more information to bring it closer to the professional circles, to the patients. In example, we are preparing our own research, and we faced the problem that we need the initial group of 40 veterans. with PTSD.
Вже
So when these veterans leave the army, they dissolve in the society. They don't want to go to psychiatrists. They resolve their issues on their own. And the only way is to find those veterans, invite them for our research, which is free of treatment, free of charge. The only way is to find some veteran communities, and I'm addressing you to spread this information among them, because through a psychiatrist we cannot approach such information. The veterans don't have a real trust with official psychiatrists, and normally they come from the outside, from veterans to veterans, and they recommend to each other. But to find a decent group for the research is really a big problem. We don't know how to find them. Well, we'll try to exchange contacts later on, but as you can see, there is no official channel which can be used for sharing this information, and this needs another resolvement, not only on the level of personal contacts. And we are also talking to psychiatrists in psychiatric hospitals, and the official approach is that I don't know this and I don't want to deal with psychedelics, or I'm overloaded and it's not my business. But alas, this is the most common responses. Maybe someone can comment on that. Do you have any questions to our colleague? Last time I didn't name myself. I'm Halina Bilyagina. I represented myself early morning. I'm sorry for this race because I'm overloaded with work currently. Apparently I will represent an opposition. As a scientific person, I totally support any kind of researches, legal researches. But research in the science is the only way to find and promote an advancement. But I want to warn, as a teacher, and I have some interns here, and now I can hear your intonation from you saying ketamine is everything. I don't believe so, because I've been working for quite a long time, and I want to share. When I was an intern myself, it was 1990. The Department of Acute Psychiatric Department, where I worked for a year. Within that year, there were 2 people with a total diagnosis saying psychotic disorder and alcoholism. Like there was no drug addict person at all. Of course, they were somewhere, but we didn't treat them. Right now, through the years, we can see a big growth of drug addicts. I don't have any statistics currently at hand, so I will deal with my clinical experience that the departments, especially the youth departments, a combination of psychedelic substances and psychic disorders is a nightmare. I understand psychedelic is a medical way of treatment, and drug substances, which are psychoactive, are totally different between each other. But within 10 years, like years between 2014 to 2022, this was the common statistics saying that the main psychological disorders among the veterans, but until 2022, there was no PTSD. PTSD still remains on the level 10-15%. That's according to world data and our national data. But abuse of psychoactive substances is the main diagnosis. And what my colleague said, that we have heroes who come back and to deal with drugs or alcohol. And I believe as a clinicist, I'm talking not about as a teacher, but as a clinicist. I think that these two issues are quite serious ones. Alas, there's no decent statistics about it. Another thesis, it's from my experience. I remember how Ukraine faced such new drug in 1995 as agolamatin. I will not spread any information further, but when they showed it for the first time, the statistics said that 35% of the group, like it was a blind research, they caused the effect of the drug, and 30% was placebo, 5% between, it was the difference between the diseased people. But if it's 1,000 people, of course you can see the effect, and I can understand that. I'm dealing with pharmacy therapy, but I want to warn you, and it's good we have such a situation, and I was really surprised when the congresses, International Psychiatric Congress and European Psychiatric Conference, they have special psychedelic departments for this experience. As for now, we have the legislation in Ukraine about medical cannabis, but Ukrainian regulation desires to be even better, but each time when you check the new reels, a man was detained for selling drugs, a man was detained for selling drugs, another man detained, etc. But I'm not talking about the research. I understand the essence of your topic, but first of all, you need to find a group of people who can go through the correct research with exclusion of organic pathology, some accompanying pathology from the such substances, and perform a research with them. But I want to warn you, it's not about the inefficiency or potential inefficiency, but I just want to warn you, because the reality is that as such, and we can't say that all the protocols that are working and we're applying them. If we add new protocols like methadone, the results from tramadol in Ukraine that was conducted here, alas, this is quite binary topic. So as a topic of your research, I totally support, but as making ketamine a part of protocols, I know that the Europeans are using these protocols, but it's a resistant depression and resisting PTSD. So let's say as professionals that we need to look for such people with this kind of pathology and not spread the idea itself, because the people who can see and think, well, thank you for doing that in your clinics, because with total respect, but it's really hard to use. We don't know the long-term effects. Well, for 20 years we know, but you tried it on veterans with alcoholization. I know that, because this is scientific data, but it cannot be a treatment line on the first choice option, as for me. So we need to approach it very consistently, and this way we need to perform just like you planned, and everybody's requiring quick solutions. But the quick solutions, as you said about the rules, this is different, because rules is fine. Just give us a simple solution what to do. Well, I can't do that, because every situation is different. Of course, there are general scenarios, but they cannot be applied everywhere. And this is the same case with you. As for a scientist, I will not apply it as the first line selection. Let me comment here. Let me give a counter arguments to you, because my intention, if we succeed with this research on PTSD, then the next thing we will do the comparison of the therapy of the first line with depressions, not just like say a severe and medium depressions with a ketamine therapy. Because in the practice, in accordance with the protocols, we need to apply the therapy of the first line and offer it to a person. But the person has the right to choose, like a freedom to choose. And what we see actually is the therapy of first line for depression is the antidepressant, and you wait for a month. Second antidepressant, second month you wait. So at least you lose 2 months to research a person to see if she gets the result. With a ketamine therapy, we can see the result in 2 weeks. If there is result or there is no result. If it is there, then it works, it's fine. And in a month, a person comes out of depression. If it doesn't work, well, I understand ketamine is not panacea and it works differently with different people. But if it doesn't work after 4 sessions and 2 weeks, we need to think of something else. What I mean to say, that in reality, this is a therapy of the future, but it has to collect a lot of evidence to make it absolutely sure, not just like now when we're collecting the experience. And here I totally agree with you. So we need to make small steps, but still move ahead and see what really works in our situation. Well, hopefully this will work. I'm not setting this as 100% achievement, but preliminary I can say that there is hope. So there'll be no depression in all of us. Thank you for observations. I think we have a question.
You mentioned going to a conference last year with other world leaders, and I'm assuming they may have shared their own experience, a lot of the resistance that you may be encountering here in Ukraine. I'm wondering if you heard similar types of challenges, similar types of debate, what you experience from other cultures. Is it something that we can apply here in Ukraine to learn from what they have done, what they have applied, the challenges that they are facing?
I think we basically come through a way that most of countries, because always we have some misunderstanding and stigma about psychedelics, but because on the West it all started much earlier, then society more informed and people know that's better. And here we need to come the same way, but came through much faster. And luckily we have all this information available from foreign researchers, from foreign countries. It's very supportive. For example, now our Australian colleagues were a year ago, it was officially allowed to use MDMA and psilocybin in clinical practice. We're now able to refer our authorities to their experience, to the way they came the legislation through, and our Ministry of Health communicate also with this Australian functionaries to share experience. So yes, we have our peculiarities, but owing to international experience, it's more supportive. So we're facing more support than challenges in this way. Thank you.
Дякую.
Thank you. Thank you for having a controversy. We also have that controversy in USA because we can use ketamine only to treat the resistant depression after a person goes through 4 other medications. Other such drugs are not allowed, and this is a hard job because right now we have only one published research 2 years ago which has more patients, which was quite randomized, double-blind, and placebo-controlled for MDMA. This is the only one, though we know there is a chance to do that, but it proved that as an assistant substance it has a great effect, and we were totally surprised. We wanted to believe that, but we described our research in numbers, and it was a great effect then, but it was a supportive function. There was psychotherapy also, and thank you for underlining that, because we have our veterans and amateurs who can hear that, oh, this worked, they buy ketamine or MDMA or LSD, and they use them, and they don't get the desired results. So what we know, that this context of therapy is an assistive device, but as a myth that it gets you well if the injection or orally there is a hallucinating medication and it heals you. Alas, this is a myth, though widely spread and quite strong. And we have the veteran groups, of course, that they are the core of our work in US. And of course, in that core, there are people who are spreading the wrong information on marijuana, ketamine, and other substances that can be bought from the black market and use it as abstinence syndrome. But if this is in the program where everything is tested and the patients are controlled, that can attain you a good result in the future. By the way, one of the most widespread questions that we are asked is saying, well, you treat this person with a ketamine, he feels well, but after that they'll get addiction. After that they'll want this ketamine, they'll look for ketamine somewhere and they use them on their own. But this is one of the stigmas, I believe, because we're using psychotherapy for a person turns this medication not into kaif. They don't have hallucinations and they don't fly with super high feelings. It's actually a hard job. So using of the ketamine with these patients will be associated with a severe psychological work. So there will be no addiction to ketamine. And on the contrary, when some, as I heard, some of the relatives are asking like, okay, are you looking for ketamine anymore? And the person says, no, I've had enough of the experience after the therapy. I know how it works and I don't want to face it on my own if I take it. And I'll return to my traumatic experience. I don't want to go back to that on my own. I want to have a therapist on my side who will help me. So we're not talking about addiction at all, because any addiction for ketamine, it will require half a year of big dosage of ketamine every day. But when we're talking about a treatment is 8 to 10 sessions, so addiction is not evolved. We should not be afraid of that. We need to treat it professionally and know what to do.
Agree with what you said. I'm not qualified necessarily to make it to decide for myself whether ketamine is a safe way to get treatment, but I believe there's enough promise and enough expertise that an individual should have access to that. As far as, and also especially soldiers, if it can help them, I totally believe they should have the freedom to do it in a safe and regulated way. But to get to that point where we're talking about doing this as a society and getting consensus enough to where it can be a general protocol and an agreement, how do we exactly get there? Are, the government, members in the government, they're going to be shown research and graphs, and hopefully they're going to make a combined decision. And eventually all of our experts that here have expressed opposition, hopefully they will see a way to believe that there's safe and general protocol. Other than research and graphs, how will researchers like yourself present to the general public information to make that kind of conclusion that it should be safe, that it is safe, effective, and could be considered generally acceptable as a treatment?
This is the way, because for each method of treatment there is a procedure and we have to follow it, otherwise it will not be considered. So when the war started, we members of association have meeting in National Health Center belonging to Ministry of Health, and we were spoken with them because their duty is to introduce new type of therapy, new substances. We were telling about the ketamine therapy. Luckily, they were knowing about it. They were open to discussion, but during the discussion, that was the only way how we can move. For example, what concerned depression, they were like more open to consider available international protocols because there are more data available regarding the treatment-resistant depression. So possibly they will be open to include this data and allow it to be used in national protocols. However, regarding PTSD, there are less data, and so more research is needed. That's why we are moving now in this direction, and because that's the way. But I also forgot another aspect while we're speaking about the militaries. At least for ketamine-assisted therapy, it is not only treatment of PTSD in veterans, so not only consequences. But our practical experience shows us that ketamine also is a great potential remedy for military burnout. So, for example, I have some cases, friends who serve in special forces. When they return from experience, they exhausted, and we have experienced that several sessions restoring them. They are able to function efficiently. And we were trying to bring this information to military service, but unfortunately they are not open to it. But that can be very efficient way to help people not to develop PTSD. So timely this anti-burning therapy could prevent development of PTSD. Of course, it's just empirical data. It's need again research, but that sounds very promising.
No, those are good points. Just to answer you, there's always a concern that we have to balance safety and accessibility and efficacy. So in the US, I would bet that within 5 years, we'll probably have MDMA approved for PTSD treatment. The study 2 years ago was remarkably powerful. It was a well-designed study. You can't argue with it. It'll probably be confirmed. And my guess is it'll come into being. Now, of course, 5 years is a long time to wait if you're not feeling well. Easy for me to say, wait 5 years. I'm not the one experiencing the PTSD and the anxiety. But we're so focused on keeping people safe that we at times prefer to err on the side of having people wait longer and suffer somewhat than unleashing a new drug in the general public where it could cause untold damage. Once the FDA approves a drug, I as a doctor am no longer obliged to use it only for that indication. Once it's in the pharmacies, I can prescribe for anything I want as long as I argue it's reasonable. So once it goes into the wild, it's in the wild. And we've got to be pretty careful before we release a new modality. Because we tested it in a population that's very clean, very carefully modulated, carefully watched. Once it's in a pharmacy, anything can happen. And I can appreciate your frustration, and many veterans say the same thing to us. But we've been burned many times in history with releasing a drug too soon and then paying a very high price afterwards. But there's always this tension, always this tension. Did he answer your question?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it just takes time. It just seems to take time to get general
It
consensus
all
and
takes too
research.
long. It takes sometimes a decade or more to push a drug through the process that the FDA approves it. Так само в Україні є? Go ahead. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up.
I think what I'll just add is it does take a long time for new drugs to receive approval. But I think it's important to remember that doesn't mean we don't have anything available now. We actually have incredibly effective treatments that do not have the side effect profiles, that do not have the risk. And so I think sometimes what happens when we're talking about new experimental therapies, we think in an all or nothing concept. But I think, again, the good news is we've got incredibly effective therapies available right now. And so it's a matter of how do we make those available to military personnel, civilians, others, as quickly as possible so that we can start. We don't actually have to let people languish in suffering for many years. We can do something about it now, and then hopefully in a few years, maybe there'll be new options available that will be beneficial to those who perhaps do not benefit from the therapies that are currently available.
Yeah. That's a good point. Отже,
Sorry, I know we're all getting hungry for lunch, but I just appreciate that it isn't an all or nothing, and in terms of getting other, even drugs, medications that we know are working included in the PMG, the Program of Medical Guarantees. Right now it's heavily weighted towards the antipsychotics. I know there others are available, but in terms of coverage, affordability, I think that's another area. How can we work together to advocate for that to NHU, SU, and the PMG?
Thank you. Мої шановні, маємо 20 хвилин.
Dearest, I have 20 minutes, and as I said earlier,
І що ми втечемо назад до США, до інших країн, ви тут лишаєтеся.
protocols and what you do and what you're gonna do about it, and you should have some use from our conference, not just a way to speak out. So let's make some general conclusions on what we did, on what we said, and I hope that between you'll create a group on the internet or in physical presence, and you will use these conclusions into action so it could have some effects in the country. Of course, I'm a part of a diaspora from the US, and we go back to our country, and you will live in your reality and you will have your responsibility. So we are just assistive devices, but you're the main drivers in this affair. So let's start making conclusions. What are the main recommendations? So we could put them down in front of our future committee. What are the needs that have to be covered? Please.
Participating very much. It was very interesting to listen, all of you, and I have a deep respect to all of your experience, and what it was very interesting. To summarize all that we have discussed today, that we have to do more like forums, collaborations with psychologists, psychiatrists, to share our experience. Also, we have to increase understanding of civilians, of families, and just civilians, how to communicate with militaries. And first of all, it's not only how to help them to deal with their problems, acute problems, but also in daily life. To watch in their eyes, for example, and say thank you and have this respect in our heart when we meet them. Also, we need to have a lot of books, films to help us understand how to communicate with militaries. And also we have multimodal treatment, for example, ketamine-associated treatment. It's an open question because we still not, our government still didn't approve that, but it sounds to me very inspiring. And we should discuss this because stigma, psychedelics versus narcotics should be discussed publicly. It shouldn't be something something popular. It should be something like very specific for small amounts of people who really need this. Also, we need to support of mental health of workers and volunteers because they are who helping others should care about their mental health first of all. And we need highly specialized treatment, and as we are lack of resources, we have to share this knowledge for others, not really highly specialized. For example, MHGAP really helping for this. And we are already doing these steps to increase our mental health understanding and supporting, but we still have a lot of ways when we can improve more.
Дуже вам дякую.
Thank you a lot for your opinion. What we have said, we'll print it out and we'll hand it out to you. And we have created a group on WhatsApp with your names. You can use them. And I wish you could communicate on this group to see what you have said and had some specific results and inspirations. And one more principle from your experience: when you're developing new methods or approaches, you need to include veterans or soldiers. Except for some of guests, we are the paper army, and theoretically we can put down on paper everything, but it's sometimes not relevant to the needs of real people. So please include soldiers and veterans in your planning works, especially on a scalable. So that's my recommendation. So thank you very much for your presence and cooperation. Thank you for sitting here for a long time. I hope you will use this experience that we can share, and the group in WhatsApp will be working for you, and you will keep communicating. And maybe even if one idea comes out from the seminar, this will pay back to all of us. Are there any questions or recommendations? I understand we have a glycochemy now, but maybe some final questions. Let me speak from the trench, as if I'm the trench. The soldier is a subject, let's say. So to get to the subject, it's a great honor to reach out to him because he is the real world, and if he is allowing us to communicate with him, then this is the highest standard, because for some reason the researchers think that when we meet the soldier with PTSD or with trauma, then he can be an object for our experiments. I don't think it's a good idea. A personality, and the best psychologist is the co-fellow of the soldier, a part of a family, because we're working in conditions of war, and the population who is traumatized and the soldier is traumatized, so it's a good experience from our American and European colleagues, and I accept it with many thank you. Sometimes some things do not work. For example, thank you for experimenting to my another colleague, and I understand that there are some colleagues that oppose because there is no protocol, but we will create the necessary protocols, because we have a guy who is coming back from the front and there is an issue with the family who are left with him face to face. I understand what's going on in the boy's head, and I understand what is going in the family. So just an example, sorry for hurting your feelings. Do you know we have some special detainment patrols? I had an experience when the colonels brought me to these detained soldiers, and these colonels ran away and said, "We'll be back in the evening." There was 100 persons who were detained, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what if I need a protocol from Israel or something. But I've seen the most active person, and I hug him and say, "Bro, I'm a sailor and you're a sailor. Can you give me 10 commanders here to arrange the order here?" He gave me 10 people. We made an order, and I understood they became the fuse there, because they abuse with alcohol and drugs, and they decided to kill themselves. But it's not their problem. It's the problem of their commanders, because those boys didn't go to fight because their co-fellows died earlier. And these boys turned outside the law, and I made a lot of efforts to bring international group, and we sued the criminal for wrongly issued order. I want you to understand that these boys are unique, but they don't want to kill themselves or set up their compatriots. And as an expert, I can say that we're working with reflects and results, because a person who is an alcoholic used to be a good father, a good person. So the system of the war destroyed their social functions. So I want you to understand this, that these are people who are valuable as humans. And what we need to use here, there is an Israel approach, salutagen and pathogen approach. Salutagen approach, when we provide a chance to a soldier to socialize later on. And pathogen is we pay attention to disease, and disease will not give you a chance to get well, because the desocialization of a soldier is the best therapy at times, because he has to have the task and a set of tasks, because when we give him an order, he is looking for a task, and we sit down with a fellow and we're asking, what is the purpose of our meeting? Of course, we have to have good conditions, and then if we communicate well, I understand I don't need drugs because I need to work on over this situation. But if we have some time after the dinner, I would like to share with the committee and provide the method which is used. It's off protocol, but I know I'm creating happy people, and if I'm not annoying you, I can share this because it's a good case and it's very efficient. And the American colleagues come and say, "Whoa, did you do that?" And I say, "Yes, we did." So my proposal is that I let you go for lunch, and I need one volunteer who will be responsible to develop the committee that we're just starting, and maybe it will be a webinar where my colleague will represent his method in a Zoom meeting or in person. So this could be the next step, and we're not out of resources yet. So maybe there is someone who volunteers for this kind of job and who will be responsible to write those people to activate your future community. Is there a person here? Because I will not be the volunteer. Could it be a therapist, a psychologist, or a psychiatric person? Anybody. But this could be a person to keep all the contacts together and push this issue, because we need an issue a person who needs to share his experience and arrange the webinars, and on the webinar you can continue on the topics that we have not touched on, and then you can create your own agenda, but we need a person who will create this agenda, and maybe this person will help the drive start and keep moving, but we need a person to give it a first start. Do we have a volunteer here? I could take it up if I have an associate, because the responsibility seems too high. Well, you can do it together. Well, I can see my potential colleagues who will cooperate with me. Well, yes, the women do support the world, so we have two ladies here. And if you're ready, thank you. So we have two ladies. We'll put down your contact information and we'll provide all the necessary materials. Thank you very much. And I hope when we come back, we'll hear the decent results about what we have started, because the question always that comes up is, what is the result of your discussion? I would like to summarize and thank Yuri and Taras for the panel and a very interesting discussion. Thank you to the colleagues for participating and asking questions. Thank you for sharing your experience. This is very valuable, and I'm glad that these discussions are taking place. I want to continue it from a concept to grow on further. So thank you for implementing and finding a responsible person who will hold on the group. Hopefully it will develop, and I'll be interested in finding some activity in WhatsApp, in communicating and maybe implementing some projects which will be required by our country. Maybe this voice will be heard somewhere more, and I will also be happy to cooperate with other organizations, because we are strong together. So thank you, and see you later. Thank you, everybody. Straight to the victory. Slava Ukraini.